from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, wildfires roll through Oklahoma while winter wheat struggles under the weight of bad weather and agribusiness meeting demand.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about records in many cases, only beef where we'd have to go back a long time not to see a record.
Argentina opens up its borders to U.S. pork, and cold temperatures slow crawfish harvest in Louisiana.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Little new rain, non-existent soil moisture, and abundant fuel is once again creating hazardous conditions for wildfires in northwest Oklahoma. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The numbers can quickly change, but heading into the weekend, there were 21 wildfires actively burning in Oklahoma. They've consumed about 250,000 acres. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin declaring a state of emergency for 52 of 77 Oklahoma counties. And right now, the fires are primarily located in 3 counties, Dewey, Logan, and Woodward. Oklahoma is at a major fire risk due to drought in the state and wind conditions. Adding to the problem, there was so much moisture last year that pasture and grasslands grew, but once the drought set in 6 months ago, it left behind an abundant fuel supply. Jared Daniels is about 90 miles from the fire, but he said he's living on high alert this spring.
As you drive, you'll see spots that caught on fire, and it's very real. It's very, it's something you kind of look around every day to make sure if there's not smoke on the horizon. You make sure that, am I going to be the next one caught in this horrible tragedy of a fire, with cattle and part of that, like I've alluded to earlier, all the rain that we had, the vegetation that we were able to build, and some of the grass that we built up last year is all sitting there. So it's kind of a tinderbox. And when you get these winds that are blowing 40 miles an hour, 50, if you get a fire, you just can't stop it. It'll almost have to run into something that won't burn before it stops.
He says this year the drought feels eerily similar to 2011. Drought is tightening its grip across the Southwest as extreme conditions spread from Oklahoma to Utah. Now, according to a new federal data released last Thursday, on the southern high plains, Oklahoma remains ground zero for the worst drought conditions in the U.S. About 20% of the state is facing exceptional drought conditions, the worst possible classification. Most of Colorado is also under severe drought, and almost all of the Texas Panhandle is seeing extreme drought or worse conditions. The federal drought map showing dry conditions have intensified across northern New Mexico and expanded over into Arizona. From drought to early season freezes, wheat growers have no shortages of challenges getting a winter wheat crop this year. This weekend, growers in the Southern Plains endured their second cold snap in a week. And while the extent of the injury from both is still unknown, Tyne Morgan says the wheat crop in the Plains is struggling to survive.
It's a struggling wheat crop in the Plains, adding to the anxiety for farmers in Kansas, like Justin Knopf.
We've had a number of conditions in our wheat crop this year that have just been difficult for it to get through.
The Saline County farmer watches wheat get put to the test every year, but 2018 is pushing wheat's limits.
It's a resilient crop, but yet there's a lot of things outside of our control that's adding to the stress of raising a profitable crop this year.
The weather unleashing another round of possibly fatal conditions the weekend of April 7th when a hard freeze blanketed the state.
This would have been a devastating freeze had the crop had normal maturity at this time of year.
Kansas State wheat specialists say the farther south you travel in the state, the further along the crop is. And so southeast portions of the state are at the highest risk of injury.
We were below that 24 threshold in that part of the state for about 6 hours or so. I think that can hurt. We can see some of those primary tillers get slaughtered off on that part of the state.
And the bigger risk of damage sets in Oklahoma right now, as concerned farmers even canceled new crop wheat contracts this week.
1% of Oklahoma was headed already. More of it was into boot stage, where we'd look at 24 degrees for 2 hours as being a critical temperature. And temperatures dropped down into the low 20s in many of those areas in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma State's David Marburger says scars are starting to show up.
We are starting now to see some injury symptoms, such as leaf tip burning.
But he says it's still too early to depict the extent of damage in Oklahoma right now.
It's the hardest thing to do, but it's best to wait a week. If it's still cool, maybe a little bit longer than a week, and then go out and then assess what type of injury did we get on this crop.
It's a delayed crop that's already struggling as drought worsens across both Oklahoma and Kansas.
After those rains finished in October, it stopped raining ever since, basically. We've had the driest winter on record for much of Kansas.
Despite the dryness, he's not seen a total loss yet.
I think we'll harvest everything, but yields are going to be pretty variable, and I would say we'll have a percentage of acres that's going to be below average.
It's that disappointing story playing out for wheat growers across the plains.
The drought is still taking away a lot of the yield potential, and it's going to hurt the crop's ability to come back from this spring freeze damage.
Knopf says poor yields may be inevitable this year.
We're going to be in a real dicey situation as we get warmer temperatures later this week and the following week, and the wheat really starts to grow.
And if rain swept the state today, Lalato says some of the state's crop isn't salvageable.
If we have some significant precipitation soon, we can still have a decent crop. But in parts of the state, southwest Kansas especially, I believe we already hurt our yield potential.
It's that potential also lost in parts of Oklahoma.
You've got a third of the state that's just in despicable, desperate conditions, and they're looking at yields, 10 to 15 bushels an acre.
A disappointing finish to the final chapter of what's been a trying and challenging year.
Thanks, Tyne. A new crop condition rating is due out later today. Last week, winter wheat conditions were some of the worst on record. Scientists say the climate boundary separating the east and western United States has shifted about 140 miles to the east. That dividing line is where rainfall naturally begins to pick up. The boundary was first discovered back in the late 1800s along the 100th meridian and has moved closer to the 98th meridian, now cutting through east central Texas along the western borders of Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa before shifting northwest through North Dakota. The northern plains are waiting out a blizzard. David Harker from AgDay affiliate WNDU TV fills in for Mike Hoffman today and joins us now with an update.
Good morning, Clinton. Randy Ermacher near Hastings, Nebraska said he's packed his equipment away for a blizzard. Randy says he's lucky because he got the majority of his field work done in the fall. He's just waiting on warmer weather to start plant now. And Matt Braun over in Denison, Minnesota sent us this photo on Friday. During that time, a little cold and rain didn't stop a tractor parade there at Randolph School. Now we've got the colder air continuing to settle in across most of the Midwest, as well as the Great Plains states, the upper Northwest and the West, above normal conditions down in South Texas. We'll have a look at the entire forecast coming up. Until then, here are some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
When we come back, a look at protein production in 2018 and the chance consumers can keep pace. Plus, Machinery Pete is here.
Stick around, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk used skid steer values.
And cold weather's creating challenges this spring for producers and not just farmers trying to get seed in the ground. In the country, later on AgDay.
With a uniquely powerful formulation of proven ingredients, Resicor corn herbicide gives you extraordinary power.
Who wants dessert?
At least when it comes to weeds.
In agribusiness, let's see how markets closed last week. We head to the floor of the CME for details.
Today's soybeans were lower. It seems that the Chinese imports were 11% lower from last year, starting to pressure that market. There has been a little bit of lackluster trade and some profit taking here at the end of the week, and it's kind of pushing the market a little bit lower. Also, corn was down. I think that spillover selling from soybeans and even from wheat. Wheat was down a lot as well. It was really pressuring those futures. Now wheat was really falling. It seems that the rain in the plains relieved some of the crop stress. The big storms did finally come, and the short-term technical numbers are really turning bearish. However, I don't believe that it's enough to really mitigate all the damage that may have happened over the last season here for winter wheat. Today, cattle was mixed. It seems that the better sales and the growing supplies kind of competed with each other, and they really pushed the futures sideways. However, traders are concerned that we're looking at lower beef prices ahead, and we're still awaiting the seasonal springtime boost that we normally get at this time. The feeders also were very steady. It seems that the lower cattle weights as well as the TPP talks are really driving the markets, kind of going back and forth. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
The U.S. Trade Representative's Office and USDA announcing that pork is eligible for export to Argentina. It's the first time since 1992. The USMEF says Argentina's per capita pork consumption has grown nearly 60% since 2011. Argentina is the third largest pork importing country in South America. It's shaping up to be a record year for protein production here in the U.S. Can consumer consumption keep up? Here's Tyne Morgan from the road with today's analysis.
Here now is Scott Brown of the University of Missouri. Scott, when we look at 2018 and we see these herds grow, do you think we'll see record protein production in 2018?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about records in many cases, only beef, where we'd have to go back a long time not to see a record. Record pork production, probably record poultry production. Likely we're going to put record meat consumption in front of U.S. consumers this year.
So then what does that mean for prices? I mean, last year we saw really large production, yet demand was really good, and you know, we kind of kept this balance. But I mean, do you think that can continue this year? I do think it's tough when you look back at history where we compare 2017, where we had increases in per capita consumption and higher prices. We've never back-to-back that. We've never seen a back-to-back year like that. So it's hard to say 2018 we can repeat it again. However, consumer demand for meat products has been very strong of late, and it seems like we're in a little different world than we've been in the past. So we have to hope that that demand strength continues. Economic growth in this country, I think, has been helpful. The economy being stronger has certainly provided more dollars back on meat purchases. But with these talks on tariffs and other exporting news that's really being talked about right now, do you think that demand can continue? Yeah, I don't know. So this is where we need the floodgates wide open, if you will, in terms of just the amount of supplies we have. If any of those demand gates close, trade, for example, it's likely a very tough world for really all meats as we look ahead. And when you look at that pork tariff specifically, what cost do you think pork producers are going to have to pay? Yeah, it looks like right now when you think about that's primarily going to be pork variety meats that suffer as a result of those tariffs. You're probably going to lose another $4 to $5 a hog off of those already low prices. Yeah, already low prices. So then, I mean, are for most producers, are they even breaking even at this point? I think we've seen a real switch, especially with some higher feed costs that we've faced so far in 2018, that what we hoped might be at least a break-even year is starting to see some red ink already. All right. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate it. Let's take a break, and then we'll be back with more Ag Day in just a moment.
Ag Day, brought to you by Prosaro Fungicide from Bayer.
Welcome back to Ag Day on this Monday morning. David Harker in for Mike Hoffman today. David, looking at the drought monitor, boy, you can really see where it's so intense right now.
Yeah, when you start talking about those wildfires that we've seen all across the Central Plains and the Southern Plain states, it continues to be quite a mess, but there is relief in store. That relief is going to come in the form of rain showers for the northern Central Plains as well as the Southern Plain states. You know, both areas are dealing with the drought, the more exceptional drought there in Oklahoma, northern Texas, and southern Kansas. Now, that relief in the form of rain showers will come quickly in the next 6 to 10 days. Notice on the screen the precipitation this week is going to be including areas not only in the Central Plain states, the Northern Plain states, but even out west as well as all the way up into the Great Lakes. We're talking more rainfall, and in some areas near the Great Lakes could easily see 3 or 4 inches of rainfall. We've got below normal when it comes to precipitation along the eastern seaboard, the Atlantic coastal states, and they're in the Rio Grande Valley. As we take a look at temperatures over the next 6 to 10 days, well below normal, and that means the precipitation to the north, probably in the form of snow showers. You may have even noticed that from the past weekend. It's not until you get into South Texas and southern Florida, that's where we see the above normal temperatures. Unfortunately, we're not going to see all that much in the form of precipitation like we just showed you. As we take a look at the 30-day temperatures below normal up to the north, that could mean more winter-esque weather. That's if that were to be the case when we talk precipitation. We'll show you that map in just a moment. It's out in the Four Corners region as well as in the southwestern corner of the United States that we see the above normal temperatures coming in. As we take a look at precipitation, just like I had mentioned, above normal when we talk Great Lakes down through the Atlantic coastal states. You make your way off into central as well as western Texas, stretching up into South Dakota, below normal when we talk precipitation. Now, that's as opposed to the 6 to 10 day outlook, which shows a big bullseye of above normal precipitation. So anything we get even if it's in the next 30 days, is going to help in the relief for those wildfires that we've really been watching very so closely. I know as a previous wildland firefighter that those things can take off very quickly. So be mindful that relief is coming and may come a little earlier rather than later. But then again, as mentioned, anything will help. You get into the northern plain states, normal precipitation as we look to the next 30 days. Let's take a look at some local forecast out there for Hobson, Montana. Afternoon rain showers and a high of 54 degrees. We move into Winsboro, Louisiana. Sunshine is likely. That'll continue from the weekend with 67 degrees. And as we move to Jamestown, New York, rain with 44.
It's Monday, and that means Machinery Pete. He's talking skid steers when we come back. And later, crawfish producers and grain growers have something in common this spring. That's cold weather impacting production. Details later on in the country. Machinery Pete's been sifting through his books, and he found some interesting pricing for skid steers. Here's Pete.
Okay folks, today let's talk about used skid steers. Now here's a look at our just released first quarter 2018 Machinery Pete Used Values Index report, specifically on the used skid steer sector. And you can see my rating here is at 8.4 on a 1 to 10 scale, based on all the auction sale price data I've been compiling forever. Actually, 8.4 is an all-time high for used skid steer values. And for perspective, on this 1 to 10 scale, 6.0 is what I consider stable or normal. Now, you can tell by the rising index, we've had strong auction pricing. Now, we're also seeing a tremendous spike in search traffic at our machinerypete.com website. And for skid steers, in the first quarter, we saw 44.7% jump in search traffic versus the fourth quarter. And if you look back a year, we actually have seen a 94.5% jump in search traffic to used skid steers versus early 2017. Now, last week on the show here, I mentioned this 2008 Bobcat S330, 1,953 hours, sold on a farm auction in south central North Dakota April 4th for $32,000, second highest auction price ever. A couple other recent examples on the John Deere side. Here's a picture of a 2013 John Deere 326E, 251 hours on it, sold on a consignment auction in east central Indiana March 31st, went for $35,000. Third highest auction price ever on a 326E. And a couple weeks before that, Farm Estate auction March 2nd in east central Iowa. This 2012 John Deere 326D, 231 hours on it, went for $32,000. That is a record high auction price ever on a 326D.
Crawfish season is upon us, but producers have had some weather challenges. We'll have details next.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
A cold winter meant a slow start to this year's crawfish season, but warmer weather has spurred some growth and the number of crawfish being caught. LSU Ag Center's Craig Gautreaux has this report.
Snow in December and record cold temperatures in January put a chill on the beginning of Louisiana's crawfish season. While the cold weather did not reduce the population, it kept crawfish from feeding and reaching market size.
Crawfish did not grow during December, January, so they missed probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 molts. So a lot of crawfish just now are getting to a good medium size.
With warmer weather and increasing water temperatures, more crawfish are on the market and the quality is improving.
We've been very fortunate. Our catch has been pretty consistent. With the warmer weather that we've had the past couple of weeks, the catch has really increased. The size is getting very good.
Peak demand for crawfish is typically during the Lenten season. With demand expected to drop and supply increasing, consumers could soon see a break in the cost. And they also get a fresh product.
Now that the huge demand for crawfish is over with Lent, the price should come down a little bit. We'll catch it today and it'll be in buyers' hands by this afternoon, in some restaurants tonight, and if others tomorrow morning.
Most of the state's crawfish production comes from ponds that were rice fields harvested last summer. Crawfish acreage has dramatically increased in recent years and is expected to be around 250,000 acres this year.
Because rice prices were down, a lot of rice farmers have diversified and put in more acres of crawfish. So that's really the reason why we've seen an increase in acres for the last 5 or 6 years.
When pond production begins to decrease in May, wild-caught crawfish from the Atchafalaya Basin will help make up the difference. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spent part of your day with us. For David Harker and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great week in Farm Country.